was all these stolen artifacts. So he's done extensive research on what was there in temples. So he has a very sharp eye, a sharp mind, and has obviously been reading a lot. So that makes him more knowledgeable than many scholars that we have. Because I think when you're not a qualified scholar who's done like a formal degree, then your passion drives you more, and I think that's what we see in Vijay, who's put together many fabulous talks, and he's done a lot of talks for us. He's spearheaded this campaign, which is a very important campaign, and he's instrumental in bringing back a lot of the bronzes and the stone sculptures that have been missing, and that's another whole story and another whole ball game. But I think his love and interest has taken him across many countries to look at what was India's relationship to those countries, and he's based in Singapore, so traveling in Asia has been very rewarding for him, since he found a lot of connections. As you know, a lot of Cambodia has connections with India, and so does Vietnam. And Vietnam, people know very little about Vietnam and the connections with India. And initially when he suggested it, I thought, we have so much in India that we should not talk so much about Vietnam, but it's so gripping that he'll share his findings with you all. Okay, so thank you all for being here, and thank you so much, Vijay.
Thank you,
and thank you for being our assistant for the day.
Great. Thanks, Sharon, and thanks, Apparao, for being a generous host and inviting us again. In fact, I must say that this happened over 3 days, and I'm lucky that we have a full house. A full house? Okay, sure. Yeah. So, when I asked Sharon that I'm here on a short break and I wanted to talk about Vietnam, Sharon was like, Vietnam? I said, I'll make it worthwhile, and I'm sure in the next 1 hour you'll understand why. And one of the main reasons that I wanted to talk about Vietnam is the very fact that it has probably got the oldest Indic influences, and today is very special because some of the stuff that you're going to see now has a very great linking with what today is. To start with, I have two of my very close associates here, Shashwat and Arvind, who have been with me on a lot of these trips, and I would love that more of you travel, because I think the more we see, it's expanded our view on Indian art. Earlier we were constrained to Pallavas and Cholas, and I think in terms of our perspective of art has changed a lot when we went within India and without India. We have seen a lot of art forms and learned to appreciate the other art as well. And I think it's not publicized enough that we miss to see these treasures. So without much ado, I'll go straight into the presentation, and I want to highlight the thing that pulled me to Vietnam was the single inscription of King Bhadravarman. And to me, it signifies what we are losing today. And it's a very funny and sad inscription. It says, out of compassion for me, this is King Bhadravarman talking to his successors. He says, out of compassion for me, don't destroy my gifts, which is his creations in Mison. And he says, if you destroy all your good deeds in your different birds, shall be mine, and all the bad deeds done by me will be yours. நான் கொடுக்குற தனங்களை நீங்கள் பார்த்துக்கலன்னா உங்களோட நல்லதெல்லாம் எனக்கு வந்துடும், என்னோட கெட்டதெல்லாம் உனக்கு வந்துடும் அப்படின்னு பயமுத்துறான். He is actually warning his successors to take care of his stuff. Unfortunately, the successors' reign lasted longer, but not enough, and you're going to see bulk of what you're going to see today. You go to the next slide. Has borne the brunt of war. War, aerial bombing, carpet bombing, cluster bombing, bunker bombs, name it, America has done it on these treasures. And we are going to see a lot of stuff which has come out from early excavations done by the French when these treasures were still extant and standing, and today they are reduced to rubble. And most of these artifacts have moved to museums worldwide. And what I've tried to do is I've tried to match all these together like a jigsaw puzzle, trying to put as they were standing, how they are now, where would be these statues and how they would look when they go back. Before that, I would like to have my credits. There's a lot of travel that we have done, a lot of stuff that's been in museums around. So we have made our visits to all these museums, various internet sources, various books, and of course, the ancient wisdom of our great ancestors who made it to travel to these ports, which even today is so difficult to reach. I want to start with just a few flashes of prehistory. Any guesses what this is? Tamil Mudumakkal Thari அப்படின்னு சொல்றோம். So in fact, I was on work. I work in a shipping company, and out of my work, I was in Vietnam, in Ho Chi Minh, and suddenly there was a small riot, and the city of Ho Chi Minh was barricaded. So we couldn't come back to the city, and the whole night we had to find some place to stay. So as usual, I asked that anything historic nearby where we can go and see, and they said there's a monkey island. You want to go? I said I've seen enough monkeys in my life, but anyway we go there, and there was this island where it's not actually an island; it's a swamp, and in the swamp there are crocodiles, which apparently the Viet Cong used to protect themselves during the war. And nearby there was an excavation site and a small museum which I think had never been opened, and we as usual got our guards to open it up. And the first exhibit there, this is from Hanoi, but the first exhibit there was this Mudumakar Tari. And we are now talking 2200 years ago, which corresponds to the same time where we were burying our dead in earthen pots. And how this finds the spread over Southeast Asia. This concept of burying dead in large earthen pots has something that has not been studied at all. So I would request young students here to go and look at this very important parallel that is seen across Southeast Asia, where from why did this change happen? When did we start burning our dead? From when we started putting them, what is the sizes? Are there comparables between the jars that we find in Tamil Nadu, Central India to this? Is something that I've searched the net, there's no research available. Of course, the charm script has its own set of questions, which in further light, this is not the forum, but the moment you see it, I know eyes light up, Pallava Grantha. But we are talking a time when the Pallavas had not even started establishing themselves in India. So do we need to call this Pallava Grantha is a question that we will address it at a later period. Yeah. Of course, I just want to say that some of the stuff you're going to see were abandoned. So don't form judgments on the Vietnamese, because right next to in Tamil Nadu we have same structures in similar light, where we have abandoned our sites like this. So that's Vietnam, this is India, no difference. The charm, the champa is now shortened to charm, and it's called Misson, not my son. It was discovered in 1898 by a French soldier, Paris, and then a little bit of work was done by Finot, but the bulk of the work was done by Parmentier. And if Parmentier had not documented these sites, we would know nothing about Champa. And this old man has been there, done extensive documentation, line drawings, sketches, cataloging, very meticulous work he has done. And in fact, bulk of the work that we're going to see today is going to be reconstructions of where these objects that you see in dispersed in all these photographs are today. So I've basically taken these old photographs and tried to recreate the stuff. Again, this is a long presentation, so if anybody wants to ask questions, it'll be very difficult for us to go back. Put up your hand, stop me. It's not something that you need to wait. If you find something that you want to query, stop me right there and we can discuss. So for starters, I know this is quite basic geography lesson. This is where Vietnam is. I want to put it in perspective because these are the dynasties that ruled in that period, and now we are talking about Champa is on that very edge. And what was so interesting in this land that led our people, when I say our people, I'm not going to name them because the next slide is going to give you who it is. And obviously there are people who claim, the moment you see the Varman name, immediately we say it should be the Pallavas. So is it true? We are going to see. The interesting part is most of these old names have now kind of corrupted, but then when you go back to the records, you see Amaravati is now become Quang Nam. Again, I'm not an expert in Vietnamese language, so pardon my pronunciation. At least the spellings are right. Vijay, Kautara and Panduranga. So that's central Vietnam. This belt that you see is all where you find a wide distribution of Hindu temples and Buddhist sites. And this is the Champa land, and it was divided basically into these 4 regions. The old names are very, very Indic. The charm legends talk about 2 clans, obviously at war with each other. It's a long slide. Normally I don't put this much. Basically, one was Vetalapake, the Pak clan, and one was the Tenga clan. So one is Areka clan, one is the Coconut Nut clan. This is what it is. And these 2 clans seem to have had alternating rules in Champa. Around the 4th century is when the first Indic influence starts coming in. Yeah. And it's a very unique influence, and they come up with these unique iconographic things. I find this repeat reference to something called an Uroja. Now, what is this Uroja? Is not the lady there, it's the structure that she's sitting on. Yeah, go on. So this is a stylized version of a Pida with obviously breasts all around, and that is called the Uroja. So what is this Uroja? Again, it seems to be a reference to a king. And most of the later, when I say later, we can split charm into 3rd, 4th, 5th, 7th, 8th, 9th. Around that period, you see all the pedestals seem to follow this design. Maybe that was the flavor. This king had a fascination for it, obviously. And these are not restricted to Shivalingas. You see it in almost all deities have this very unique pedestal coming up. Yeah. And believe me, these are huge. Usually you will find me standing, but this was so huge. This base pedestal, yeah, that's the size. And all of these have been, charm had a repeat incursions from the Chinese, so there was a lot of, like what we have R1314, there has been a lot of fight between the charm and the Chinese, and there's a lot of damage that's happened during that period. Yeah. They seem, yeah. We will see it as we go in. They seem to go parallel. So unlike in Cambodia where you have a clear Hindu period and then a Buddhist period, in Champa they used to go hand in hand. There doesn't seem to be a clear Hindu phase and a clear Buddhist phase. They seem to go parallel, but predominantly Hindu with a little Buddhist influence. And they had this fascination for Garuda coming in, and I think it should have been a little bit of the influence from the Indonesian side as well. They seem to have a lot of these Garuda images. Of course, his beak has been broken off, huge. And this is again a later stylization. We come to this very important inscription. This is what drove me to charm. It's not often that you find early inscriptions, and this is possibly the earliest royal inscription in Southeast Asia. You can forget any other country. Vietnam has the earliest inscription around the 340 CE. And what it talks about is the clue to the origins of the Indic influence. And this Wokan inscription is actually talks about, it's in Gupta scripture, that's what they say. It talks about a Gupta lineage king giving a tribute of white elephants to the Chinese court to legitimize his control over the charm. So there have been various readings of this. It doesn't say how many white elephants, but there was a sizable amount of white elephants, and obviously these white elephants had some, Thai culture praises these white elephants. So both in Buddhism and Hinduism, this Vella Yanai seems to be of a pride procession of the royal rulers. To answer your question, ma'am, so these are, in Tamil Nadu we come up with a frequent question, Why is it that we don't see early sculptures? The earliest Moolavars that we see are stone, and the logical reasoning is, can I have some water? The logical reason given is, though we don't have examples, maybe they were made of wood. The weather in India possibly didn't protect the wooden deities, and here you have, these are 4th, 5th century huge Buddhas in wood. And these have survived to this day. They are in the Ho Chi Minh Museum. And to just give you a size example, you will see me there. Yeah. So these are life-size wooden Buddhas which have survived for close to 1600 years. Sadly trafficked a lot. If you go out, you see a lot of these Buddhas coming out in the market. But I don't want to digress to that subject today.
So is the Buddhic influence primarily coming from India, or is it from China?
So far, the earliest inscription and the date seem to go together. So we have the earliest inscription of the Guptas around 340, and then you have these wooden Buddhas dated to the 4th century. So before that, they were basically our Tengamata and thank you. Okay, this looks like Namamikal, but is a very important stone to me and very important today, Ram Navami. Why? Because this is possibly the earliest reference to a very important poet. Any guesses? Yeah. So this is basically a Sanskrit sloka, and what amazes me is the sloka basically says, out of the anguish of this divine sage was born this epic. So not only did they know that the Ramayana was a story written by Laming, they also captured the essence. So when the hunter hunts the Krauncha Bakshi, Valmiki sees it, and out of his anguish he is basically cursing Rama, and that's what is written here. Valmiki, from whose anguish was born the verse that Brahma praised, and this is the literal translation of that inscription. And you have a lot of reference to the Ramayana in, so you have here Ravana, next. You have the Vanar Sena coming up. So here you have a 9th century inscription which talks about the army of monkeys in the middle of the city hurling, obviously, stones. So this is actually inscribed sculpture. So you have the relief and the inscription explaining. So unfortunately we get only fragments, but these fragments are very important. Just to jump to Angkor a bit, because around the same period we have these relief panels, but they are different. What I want to show you is, it's not the Khmer influence in the charm, but the charm seems to have their own styles that come up. The Khmer, this is again Banti Sarai, Ramayana. This is the fire in the Kandava panel, forest fire, which is again a very unique panel, but the style of the charm is very unique. You cannot see it in Cambodia. So the Khmer influence was not in the charm when in the period that we are going to see. In terms of the schema of dates of inscriptions, again they follow Saka era, so that is a parallel to our culture as well. Yeah, go on. So they follow a similar system to our dating on the inscriptions. Yeah, go on. Again, I'm taking this from Apparao sir's book, where it talks about development of letter from Pallava Grantha to East Asian languages. So we are talking about a 6th century start, but then we do have inscriptions that are dating prior to this. So I feel personally that we should relook at this nomenclature of calling it Pallava Grantha. Just to explain a little more, before I go into the actual sites, I want to show you a few favorite themes of the charm. Govardhana Giri seems to be a very, very favorite, and all these are lintels. So lintels in sandstone, which is highly eroded, but still retain the basic theme. So you see Krishna holding up the mountain, but so this is the Angkorian style. So you see the difference between the charm and the Angkor. Again, a very unique panel in Cambodia, which I'm just going to skip because we come to the linga. This is a classic charm linga, 7th, 8th century, and if I don't put this as charm, you would say it's Pallava. You have the classic 3 parts, the Brahmapaga, the Vishnupaga, everything is perfect. And these are huge lingas. You will see later the size of these lingas. You have lingas that were worshipped in sites, and these were personal lingas. So these are about this big. You have Spadiga lingas, you have golden ones, and all these point to the influence. Again, up to the 12th century, the Shaivite influence was very much there in terms of even private worship. So these were obviously consecration rituals. If you read about temple consecration rituals in South India, before you keep the Mulavar, you would drop in precious jewels and these figurines in gold foil, very thin. Hardly we see anything in India, but in Vietnam we see these thin gold foil works. And these are the lingas that are in the Ho Chi Minh Museum, and we find tons. But what I want you to focus on is the aspect of the face. So they start carving a little face inside with a long spire on top. And then at a later stage, these kind of project out, and then they make these beautiful silver and gold cases. So you have a linga, and then you have a muga, and then you have a small case for the muga lingam as well. Well, this is we'll see this site later, but it's quite funny that this is actually a muga linga which has been localized Vishnu. I don't see very early Vishnus even in India, and here you see the typical Vishnu in Samabanga, and the way he is holding the chakra is Prayoga chakra. This is in bronze. In stone, you see he's holding the chakra like this and the conch like this. So these are classic Pallava influence coming in. The long crown. So at some point, I think the Gupta influence faded and the Pallava influence starts coming in around the 7th, 8th centuries. So there is a change in the way the iconography changes. And then we see a profusion of these Sayana Perimals with Brahma coming out as Nabija. So you see actually the Brahma is broken out, but it's quite funny that the sculptor has, of course the lotus leaf, I didn't take the weight of the Brahma. You have 2 of them holding the lotus staff, and then the Brahma would have been on top. Line drawing just to show the effect. And more interestingly, most of the sculptures in the later date, the 8th and 9th centuries, have big mustaches, which is, we don't see it in India. You will see Shiva, Vishnu, everybody start having manicured mustaches. It's not just mustaches, trimmed mustaches. So these are Parmentier photos which have been matched to it, and here you see Vishnu himself holding the star. And these are the sizes. So these are lintels which basically have fallen apart, but well preserved lintels. Any guesses who this deity is? Okay, it's a trick shot. The next will easily make us identify that. So Vishnu Durga. So you have the parallel. So at the same period, I'm just comparing the sculptures from the Pallava period. So the Pallavas basically start experimenting with posture, Bangas, Tribanga, whereas the charms still are at Samabanga stage. So they have not yet progressed out of that. Yeah. And then at some point, they go the other way. I would say, like Ajanta, the degeneration, I'm sorry to use the word, it becomes too artistic. So this is basically Mahishasura Mardini dancing on a, we'll see the temples later. Again, these are influences. At some point of time, the Mahishasura Mardini cult spreads in Southeast Asia. The Guptas, of course, we know they were also had these large ones. But if you go down to Indonesia, for example, you have, if you go to the National Museum of Jakarta, you have about 80 Mahishasura Mardinis just strewn there. I don't know from where all they collected, but she is there everywhere, every form.
But Mahishasuram, the two important features are the buffalo head and Trishul, isn't it?
Yeah.
But here we don't find the head of it.
Just go up, Anand. So what happens is, you have these temple sites. These are the lintels, right? So you have her dancing on the bull, and then at the later stage you will see the evolution where she starts cutting out. So these are panels where she's just dancing on it right now.
The earlier ones.
Yeah. What?
Where you introduced.
Where she's standing on the head of, so it's Vishnu Durgai, where yeah, you see the head there. Yeah. Yeah. All our deities are represented. Don't ask me how she is tagged as Uma. Okay, maybe she's a little more fierce. So, no. So she is still fierce. A lot of these head cut are there, so we call her goddess Uma, whatever. And to me, beautiful representations of Surya come up. And this again is a representation of the growing Indian influence. The early ones, you have only Shivalinga, Durga, and slightly later you get all our deities coming in. Around the 7th, 8th centuries, you find the entire pantheon, and of course our cute Ganesha is coming in. Beautiful guys. In fact, one of our commenters on Facebook had asked for Gadalakshmi. Again, Gadalakshmi starts occupying the lintel as early as the 8th century in the charm structures. Finally, dancing Shiva. So, again, very stylized version and huge. And these are not costums, these are lintels. So, the lintels you have to look up. So, we are not looking at it in the right perspective now. So, imagine he's at 10 feet, him dancing. I think it will be a better representation, it will do justice to the artist. This is in the Hanoi Museum, and this one is probably one of the three which I consider the masterpiece of charm art. Such a beautiful carving, and for some reason she mutikal podunduga. She is not sitting on his lap. So I presume that this must be a representation of Ravana Anugrah Murti, where when the mountain shakes, she jumps. So this could be Shiva with Uma jumping onto his lap, which has been stylized in that way, because otherwise it's going to be very comfortable posture for both of them. The best. Could be a queen, could be Uma. One more, Harvey. Yeah. Such a stunner. She's about this big. She just speaks to you. I would say that this is the pinnacle of charm sculpture. Such a stunning depiction. Why I say it's stunning is, normally when deities you see the face is going down, and here the chin is up. You don't see this chin up feature in most Devi depictions. She is normally demure, shyly looking out, and here it gives her a kind of authority that she's up. That what is the right word? So she's there personifying the power, and she's just looking at you. Any guesses who this is? No? Okay, go on. Kalapa. Next. We find a lot of these devotees as well. Prayer nu potanga, English, pardon the English. It's a guy who is praying. So it's a prayer. So we have them. And then for the musically inclined, there are tons of these stylized depictions of beautiful dancers. This is actually on like a lintel where these dancers are portrayed, and they are in raptures basically. And the way they are bent up and they're just enjoying the music. And then just go on one up. And you have this Veena player. So he's basically playing it this way, but there is no resonator, but it could be the only instrument. And then you have these kings who have been entertained. So you have lot of these panels. So Nama Kombu Udra on the side. So they basically the long flute, and then there are dancers to the king. So the king is shown there in the center, and there are dancers everywhere, one playing the drum. That's the entire panel. So Venjamaram, with the king seated on his throne, and the dancers all entertaining the king. Yeah. A majestic flute player. The flute தலை அப்படி குனிஞ்சி வாசிக்கிறது வந்து அவ்வளோ அழகாக they have depicted. Okay, that's the introduction, just show and tell. Now we are going to the main part of the presentation. These are the sites that are there in various stages of damages. Dating them is a bit of a difficulty right now because hardly anything survives. So we are going to just go and show you a few. We will of course focus bulk of this presentation on Mison, but I think we should just give you an idea of the scale of the charm. This is Phonagar, and this is a brick temple, and it's 25 meters high. And it's the way the charm do it, they carve the bricks also, so it's ornamented brick. So sengalala kattite, they carve the designs onto it. So if you look at it, it's like a tympanum. It will be entirely ornamented inside the brick. வெளியே பண்ணிட்டு வைக்கல. So they've constructed the brick, and the typical structure we take Parmentier sketches. So this is one of the few examples which has not been bombed. So we have Parmentier sketch and the actual site, and this is where she would have been on top. Unfortunately, the main linga is gone. Somebody has made a highly stylized new Shivaling in the center. அவளுக்கு தெரிஞ்ச அளவில் ஏதோ பண்ணியிருக்காங்க, இந்த உரோஜாவும் கன்ஃபியூஸ் பண்ணி. Here is this actually there was a steel found next to this temple, which is very important. It's now in the Hanoi Museum. What is interesting is the king Jaya Indravarman erected a new statue deity for Bhagavati Uma in stone, replacing the missing one made of gold. So 918 liye gold statue has been stolen, and he has replaced it with a stone statue of Bhagavati. It's very unique because normally we don't get this name in Southeast Asia. Snow Puhai, this is another god-forsaken site, beautiful temple. Fodam, again a set of 4 towers, one has collapsed, you get only 3. Holai, again Parmentier sketch, sadly it's still remaining that stage. I would say thankfully not restored, because you will see in Mison they have tried to restore one, which puts our efforts at a much better level of restoration. Okay, this is a very unique structure, Bangan, in the sense that it's 20 meters, it's looked almost like an octagonal structure. So it's an octagonal base with a curling top on top, which forms the top shikara. And this was how it had been. So Parmentier not only did the sketches as inside, but he also completed it. So this is how he had seen it, and thankfully it stays like that. Yeah. And this is a shot of it from inside. And people have seen the big temple when you look inside. So it's similar construction of in brick though. This is the Shivling that is inside, still under worship. This is another massive structure. Now you clearly know this is a Gupta influence. So most of these early brick structures, I see no resemblance to a South Indian structure. We don't have much South Indian brick structures, but there is definitely a Gupta influence in terms of the brick structures. This is how it was when. Pardon? Worship, they light ஒரு ஊதுவத்தி இருக்கும், and they just go put some prayers. That's it. That is worship. It's still used as a temple. A huge Shivaling inside. And all these corda finials, you start getting these ornamentation of Garudas, which I think later passes on to Bali. So this is where you see all these influences get more highly ornamented from the 11th century. All the corners you get all these motifs coming in, mythical, yalis, vyalas and garudas, and I think this influence passed on to Indonesian side at some point. Yeah. This is a barrel vault, so immediate reference you see Bhimaratha coming to your mind. Beautiful structure, and you can see there is an entrance arch, Artha Mandapa and the sanctum. So that's how it is. And sadly this temple was about to be bombed. There was a telegram that went out. Mison could not be saved, and this temple, thankfully they missed the bomb. So the bomb actually fell nearby. So there was a sortie going on. They missed to bomb it. It still stands to this day. So I'm just going to run through these sites because these are, so you have, so that's where he would be. So that's the dancing Shiva standing there at that height. So now when you look at it in perspective, you see it doesn't look so odd. The Nandi is there, look slightly stunted. நம்ம ஊர் மாதிரி அவ்வளோ திமில்லாம் அவ்வளோ இல்லை, பட் அப்படி கொஞ்சம் கம்ப்ரெஸ் பண்ண மாதிரி இருக்குது, பட் நந்தி இருக்குது. ஸோ there's this, and this is our Mukaling. அதுக்கு ஒரு வியட்நாமீஸ் தாடிலாம் கொடுத்தாங்க. ஸோ இட்ஸ் மேட், ஸோ இஃப் யூ ரிமூவ் ஆல் தட், திஸ் இஸ் ஹவ் இட் இஸ். ஸோ அந்த பெயிண்டிங்லாம் எடுத்தாக்க யூ வில் see the original Mukaling there. So some form of Vietnamization of the Mukaling has happened. Gerai from the top before it, when the bomb missed it. This is again another wooden structure that you have at Barnet. Again, this site was heavily pillaged and robbed. The main structure remains. We don't know what this temple, who this temple was for. We have no references. So you see the city has grown around, but still these old sites remain. So most of it has not had much of conservation efforts, but they still stay. They've lived there for 1,000 years. They're still staying. This is one of the tallest of the charm structures. 25 meters, you can see the guy going in. So that's how they built in brick. And I'm not sure because the foundations also don't seem to be having that much of granite. So how a 25-meter high brick structure, and it's not Nambur Mari, it's not like a pyramidal structure. So it's just almost, but they go about 15 meters like a room and then have a top. But some reason I think the soil is strong, it holds up.
The binding agent is lime.
Some of them, what they talk about is they use some vegetable mix. Not much is known, but you do see when you go to Mison, you will see they used a binding material. So these bricks were not just loosely stacked. There is a binding material, but it looks like a little bit of lime with some more. It's not just purely lime. So this was again the Shiva who was there in Tapnam. He is now moved to Hanoi. And most of them are like this. Nambur Mari or Periya complex la illa. Just these towers that stand. Only in Mison you have these entire complex. Most of these are just random towers just standing there. Not much construction around it. Not much walls. Maybe they have not stood. They just build high. And not much development work after that. One king does it, leaves it at like that. And they seem to have not got into this habit of carving, maybe because it's brick. They make steels. So the stela basically have the king's donation and they are placed in front of the temple. So நம்ம ஒரு மாதிரி கோயில் செவுத்துல இன்ஸ்கிரிப்ஷன் இல்லை, தனியாக அதுக்குன்னு ஒரு கல்லில் செதுக்கி பக்கத்தில் வச்சிருக்காங்க donation. So we go into the main site, another half an hour. Mison today is in central Vietnam. You have to go to Da Nang. You can fly to Da Nang from Singapore and from Thailand. And from Da Nang you go Hoi An, which is a beautiful French influence. And from Hoi An is about 40 kilometers. And it's a site that you should not miss, because when you go there, you should go to Da Nang and see the Charm Museum of Sculpture, because most of the sculptures are not there in Mison, are there in the Da Nang Museum of Sculpture. So what you're going to see is you're going to see a mix of both. You're going to see the main site, how it was in Parmantia's photographs, how it is now, and where is the main deity. So Mison basically has different monuments, and they have been graphed in two ways, which you will see, and this is how it looks. And this is a Shivaling, by the way, it's not a pillar. It was the main Shivaling, and that's the size of the linga. And imagine if this was the size of the linga, what was the size of the whole temple. They are grouped by position. So when you go into Mison, it's actually a sacred valley. So it's not huge, it's more like a hillock surrounding a depression into which the entire site is, and it's considered to be a sacred valley. People still consider it a sacred ground. And then they have grouped it by A, B, B, G, D, E, H, K, and they are not by dates. It's by physical location, geographical location in this grouping. I tried to put a stylized based on chronology. It's very difficult. So it's anyway, for reference, it's just there. So I think we follow what the French did, go by the geographical location. This is the main temple. Go on. Yeah. So just to explain, all those flashy, the Mattapamar irukla, adella the bomb craters. So whatever you see there, next slide. So this was the French. So I'll take the French map for us to understand. So group A, A1 was the tallest tower. Yeah. Go on. Yeah. Yeah. And this was how it was when Parmentier was there, and they did a little bit of cleanup and restoration work. And this is how it is now. Completely bombed. So Parmentier's sketch after the renovation was done, A1 was standing like this. Such a beautiful site, reduced to rubble. For people interested, the Vietnamese also studied it. So nammaloda ella koiloda ella bhagangalum irukku. We don't want to go into that now. We just go and see the main shrine. So this is a temple for Shiva. There was so just to compare the big temple, so something similar in terms of the hollow space in between. So how it would have looked before, sadly we don't have much except this one. Just go up one. This is the photograph. This is the possibly the only photograph available, and only the Shivaling survived, thankfully, on the photo lens. So now we go in, just go inside. You see, even after the bombing, the central sanctum survived. We go inside a bit, and the base has survived. The tower has fallen. So that is the base itself is so big, is almost 5 feet high. Yeah, one. So now there's another subsidiary shrine, A10, which was like this during Parmentier, is now reduced to rubble. And the only surviving is, so when they built these brick temples, Mahabalipuram Mari, மேல இருக்கிற top filial was made of stone. So most of these sites, the top filial has survived, and the top filial is inscribed. And this has a Sanskrit inscription dated to the 7th century. It says Maheshwara's abode. So, go on. There are subsidiary shrines. So this should have been a full temple. A13 is also reduced to rubble. Just go on. That's what remains on the site. So it was one of. So there would have been on all the 4 sides. There would have been these towers, and you had a central Shiva shrine and a ancillary shrine to it. This is where they were. A12, A13, old sketches. Go on. Reduced to rubble again. Some of these pathways are still not accessible. They have not been cleared of mines, so you have to stick to the path. So this is the entrance. So as you come in, this is the entrance, and that's the main shrine. And all the 4 sides you had the corner gopuras. So we go and see the B, C and D. And this seems to be the general concept. So you have the central shrine, the Artha Mandapam is here and the Mahamandapam is here. So each one seems to have, so each of these kings when they built, they didn't expand the old one, they just constructed their own on the side. So these are Parmantia sketches again, photographs again, and you see the natives were used to explore, and they basically collected and meticulously documented every find. They still remain like that, and this is the main shrine, B1. Now B1 is important because as you enter the big temple, you know that there are these two huge towers, pillars, huge blocks of stone, and as you walk in, you see these two blocks still there, and they have some beautiful inscriptions in it. So these would have been the main load-bearing structures, and in that side, the entire pillar is covered by beautiful inscription that survived to this day. The Shivling is there in the sanctum. Unfortunately, it's broken. I think it was during the bombing. It's so big, it's huge, and it still survived. But this was how it was when it was excavated. This is again from the sketches, and you see these massive pillars. So these would have been a huge tower over the Shivling. Yeah, sorry, and that's just me not posing to give you a scale. All these tower pillars are there on the side. B6 again, it's a barrel vault. You see the Shikara has, the top filial has fallen down. Here, this is what I wanted to show you. So this is an example of how they built a brick structure and then carved into the brick. So this is not something that they have done and put it inside. So they have actually carved the brick to have this niche. So nama costume mari, so keeping something in the costume, they've carved the costume basically into the wooden bricks. And the doorways were stone. So basically the load bearing, again from the inside, very similar to our temples. Yeah. So I'm just putting a few of Tamil Nadu's work for you to understand. Say that there's no difference. Right? The big temples view, just to show that there is, at least in architecture we followed. Again, quite unique is, as I told you, not only the Shivalingas had the Peedam, almost all statues had this. So maybe to collect the Abhishekam water, most of them have this Peeda, and this is one of my favorite sculptures. I call him the Chris Gale Ganesha. You will know why when we go near. He is now in the Danang Museum. Very cute fellow, and there he is with his braided locks. Almost Egyptian kind of view. There he is, Ganesha, with very, very odd to see him with hair, and here you have him with really neat braided locks. B4, it's again a Shivling that's been there on site. So most of these early influences, 7th, 8th centuries, were Shiva temples. And what you should understand is, we go back to the first slide, Bhadravarman basically built these in wood. And in the 5th century, there was a big fire, and all these wooden temples were burnt away, and then they were converted to brick. So most of what you are seeing is one step after that, where the wooden structures were converted to brick. This is a very beautiful, very unique standing skanda on a peacock in stone with a pedestal, but is a very sad case of how illicit sales in antiquities is causing a damage. So somebody has hacked off the face of the skanda. This was when he was excavated. He had a beautiful one, but now somebody has chipped off, literally sawn off the face of the skanda. So far it's still not come out for sale. Somebody has fenced it, or some billionaire has it. So we just run through quickly for the rest. B5 again has this entire row of ornamented costas. It's got a barrel vault, as I said, inside, and this niche which has two elephants. Just go back. So you see these two elephants there shaking a tree on relief on brick. Yeah. Quite unique in the sense we found this. Just go up a bit. We found this. Go up. This stone tub. இப்போ தஞ்சாவூர் போனீங்கன்னா சொல்லுவாங்க ராஜராஜன் இங்கே தான் குளிக்கிற பாத் டப்னால ஒரு விரல் கூட வைக்க முடியாது. ஸோ I presume it would have been either a holding tank for oil, for basically having their carving chisels. We have these. This is actually in Indonesia, Jakarta Museum. You have a similar stone tank, and this is the one in the so-called bathtub in Big Temple. And it's such a small opening. I don't think you can call it a bathtub. So just to explain, unlike our temples, they just made these stelas and placed them next to the temple. So you find no inscriptions on the walls, but you have each of these sites have this inscription going on. Again, Saka era. We move to C. C is quite well preserved, better preserved, and you see these entrances have stone structures. The jala stone interlacing with brick. So you have main load bearing structures are in stone, and the other structures are in brick. So this is one of the most important structures. So you have these stone structures, and this lintel Nataraja is actually saved in the site museum in Mison. Yeah, go on. And there you see him dancing, and you actually see Karakal Ammayar there dancing away. And this lintel is sadly badly damaged, but you can clearly see Shiva dancing, Nandi seated. There's a drummer, a flute player, and then on the corner you have Ammayar on the cymbals. Go on. Go on. Yeah. The D group again looks more like a gallery now because they've used it for the site museum. It's got a lot of these loose structures inside. Let's go inside. Yeah. The concept of Koshtamurtis doesn't seem to exist. So most of them are just ornamental like this. There is not separate niches that are there. And they found a lot of these freestanding sculptures, and there is one interesting one that we need to see is there. Any guesses who is? Go on. Shiva. So I talked about Shiva's moustache, right? There. It's actually a beautifully trimmed moustache, and usually amateurs, when they first start, the moment you see elongated ears, say, it's Buddha, this is Buddha. No, most of these have elongated ears, and you actually have the third eye which has been chiseled off, and that's the size of it. And more interestingly, the next one we have is the Garuda, who's still on site in Mison. And what is interesting is this Garuda has the classic Virasana posture. This is the Met Garuda from Pandya region. So you can see this is the Metropolitan Museum in New York. You can see here he doesn't have his wings, but the postures, the Naga Abharanam was all there. So we know he is Garuda. What? So from that time to this plastic art. So in the 8th, 9th, 10th, you have beautiful these freestanding sculptures. After that it becomes rather cartoonish. This becomes like an illustration for Amachitrakada. So you have a lot of these come up, and what you have to see is this example. I'll just go up one bit. So here you see how they had this wedge for all these deities that goes like a socket that goes into the pedum. So this is how they were slotted in. His head is gone. So you see clearly Shiva with his moustache and the third eye, And just to compare, this one is charm, this one is charm, and this is Khmer. So you see the ornamentation is very different in the Khmer styling. The eyebrows are different from the charm.
When you talk about the other ornaments that are they like quite similar to the...
Shivanuku enna ornament? Mandavodu or yeah, most of the ornamentation on the Devis are very less compared to the charm. Okay, this is a sad example of how you should not renovate a structure. Sadly, they have done it. Group D, so it looks more like a modern house now. They've used baked brick, and apparently this is how it look after they complete. So I'm not sure if anybody wants to go and see it in that form. Go on, Group H, the rush. So Group H basically has suffered a lot of damage. Is the only structure remaining, and there is one. Okay, just show this brick. So the brick sizes are comparable to, if anybody has been to Korkai, the Chola lighthouse. So the size of these bricks are very, very similar. They are thin, flat, rectangular, and the shikaras are there in stone. Go on. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Just stay there. Group E suffered the brunt of the bombing. Just go up one. Yeah, down. So all this Kamimatapi you see is all where the bomb craters are. So you see E4 was a direct hit. Just see the damage of these craters. Thankfully the French, when they excavated it, moved some of them. So this was what we saw earlier was there in E1. So you clearly see that the lintels were different for the Shaivite shrines and the Vaishnavite shrines. Shaivite shrines, it was Durga, Nataraja. For the Vaishnavite shrines, you had Sayana Perumal occupying the lintel. Yeah. Yeah. This is a brilliant altar that is now in the Danang Museum of Sculpture. All rishis in various forms, devotees, Mukali sitting down. We all talk about a flute player, somebody relaxing. All these are there. And then the peace de resistance. Vishnu on Garuda. I don't know whether to say it, thankfully in the Musée Guimet in Paris. It would have been at the group E7, E4, all of them completely damaged. And this is a very unique player, again, E5. So there was a separate temple for Pilayar around the 7th century in this site, and you actually see him standing there with in Samabanga. So around the 7th century, where the Pilayar cult kind of comes into Tamil Nadu, we already have him. And here the previous one is a question for the historians. What is he holding in his hand? Just go up. This is a 7th century sandstone Pilayar. He's holding a cob of corn. It looks like it. Yeah. Go on. Yeah. Yes. All in various stages of restoration. We come to some of the very unique sculptures. The previous one, I think this is probably the most unique puzzle, because it defies logic. To me, if somebody says this is Gupta art, I will take it as. It looks like that. It doesn't look like anything that is related to the charm. There are no parallels to it. We go to the next one. It's a huge Shiva, massive Shiva sculpture, which is now in the Danang Museum. Yeah, that's how big he is. And then they seem to have this fascination for Veenadaras. You have a lot of these Shiva Veenadaras, Shiva playing the Veena, multiple armed. Yeah. Just to compare it with Kanji Kailasnatha Veenadara, Badami, Kailasnatha again. So most of these, you have this resonator that seem to be against the left breast. They just keep it on the left breast. This is Nepal, stolen again. Dancing Shiva, again a popular concept. You see him with multiple arms dancing away. Very stylistic representation. And a lot of these Ramayana friezes. As we saw earlier, we already covered this. Now, in terms of comparative depictions, I just wanted to highlight one very unique sculpture, Ravana Anugrah Murti. We have this all over Southeast Asia. This is the one in This panel, unfortunately, is fallen down and cracked and broken. And this probably is the best depiction of Ravana Anugrah Murti I have seen ever. Just for this one reason, we just go in as it was excavated, this is how it looked. Now, what is unique in this form is, usually the way the 10 heads are shown, normally in India you have them like this, in Khmer you have them go up like a spire. Here, I don't know if when I was young they used to have this Limca book of thing where you just push the book, you will have active figures. So the face is actually depicted. Go on, one more. Yeah, just put up. Yeah. So this is how they have depicted the 10 heads. It's like a stack of cards come up. So it's a very unique. I've never seen such a depiction of Ravana Anugrah Murti anywhere else. How on a relief they have creatively used the space.
Does he have an extra leg?
Pardon?
The leg.
Okay, it's dynamic sculpture, so he's lifting it and then he is crushed. So that's how it's basically him trying to lift and then he is being crushed. So if you take that part, you forget the center portion, it looks as though he's trying to lift it. So when he is failing in, his leg goes down. Again, the famous panel just to show you in Bantisarai, where you have the 10 heads go up on the head of Ravana, where they've shown. We don't have this arrangement in India, but the charm is very special. And this again, initially I thought it was Ravana, but then if you count the number of hands, there are hands missing. So it could be a Buddhist depiction of Mara. We have a lot of these. So we've seen bulk of the Hindu icons. I just wanted to touch a bit on the Buddhist icons. Huge Buddhist icons that are there. This is again Shiva. This was an object that was stolen and it was repatriated back. It was an inscribed. So they have this habit of inscribing. So anything in stone, it's free game for them to inscribe. So stone, if they find a stone pillar, they will inscribe. So in this case, this is the back of the deity. So they used it because they can't use the brick because it's going to go off. They used to inscribe. This was stolen from the museum and finally came back to the museum. And you have.
Cambodia, have you converted a lot of Hindu temples into Buddhist?
See, the thing is, we don't have anything in sight right now. What is remaining is the Hindu temples. The Buddhist deities are basically mostly from excavations. We don't see any Buddhist shrine so far. And a lot of these miscellaneous warriors, door guardians, having all these weird, so there's a buffalo from whose head somebody is coming up, huge sculptures that are there. And interesting is, I told you, I have this, whenever I see an old photo, it becomes a hobby for me to trace where these photos are. So I managed to find all them except the one on the right, the kneeling door guardian or kneeling whoever. So I was in a museum in Europe and the curator is a good friend. He said, "Oh, you want to see Indian stuff? Why don't you come and see my charm stuff?" So we went there and she was sitting there. So, you know, it's dispersed art. He is sitting there. Okay, go on. So these photos are important evidences. So the photos serve a very unique purpose. So we managed to find all of them. Go on. So just to show you a few more dancers. There's another puzzle here in one of the main sculptures, which is again open for people to. So you see the base. We'll go into the base now. So there is this famous Nandi base, which has got these row of dancers on one side. Next one. And then on the other side, okay, the Nandi, as we've identified, it's in the Danang Museum. But this row of dancers on one side and then the next side, go on, has this, yeah, go on, some more, yeah, okay, one more, put it. Yeah, now what is the storyboard is something that we have not been able to decipher so far. Does it represent Krishna Leela? Somebody said in the next slide you will see a baby crawling. So we don't know what this depicts. So it's something that can be taken up for study. Go on. So there are a lot of these depictions. We don't know what these depict so far. We have not been able to decipher this. And then there is also a lot of Dikpala sculptures, just go on, dispersed. Dancing Shiva, the Dikpalas. You have all of them with their Vahanas clearly indexed. Go on. Again, around the 10th century, you have all of them here with their Vahanas. So there's been a definitive flow of Indic influence. Not only that, you have this huge Buddha with his tympanum as well, and then again they follow somewhat similar to Amaravati and Sanchi if you look at the depictions of the visitors coming in. Yeah. Now we are almost to the end, and this is a very unique bronze. So as usual, it was excavated. The people who excavated thought it was gold, and they cut out two very important attributes she held in her hand to check if it had gold. Fortunately or unfortunately, it didn't have any gold. What did they cut out? One was a lotus and one was a conch. So this is a very enigmatic puzzle. So who is she? We don't know. So she has a third eye, she has a Buddha seated on top, and she holds a conch and a lotus flower. So what happened was, when she was found, the district collector apparently went to fetch this, and the local panchayat chief, or whoever you call it, he had seized these lotus and conch. But the district officer did not go to this leader's house to pay respects. He went directly to the site and took possession of the deity. So only the deity has come to the museum. The village still has these two with them for last 70 years. They don't want to return it for one ego issue. So now what they call her is, they call it, so that's how she would have stood. So they call it Lakshmi Indra Lokeshwara. And what is more interesting in this is, this deity was found buried in a proper pit, face down, lined with charcoal and kusha grass, which is exactly how our agamas say how the deity should be buried in case of threat from a foreign invader. They say that you have to take out this deity, dig a pit, line it with whatever fresh sand, place it upside down. So not only the agamas for construction, the agamas for protection were also transmitted out, and this happened when there was a Chinese threat. They safeguarded this bronze this way, and it was dug up at a later stage. And a lot of these icons, we see the influence of early Buddhist sites, and then possibly the first polo game in sculpture. Thank you, and I hope you had a good time and you enjoyed. Next time, hopefully, I will talk to you about the beauties of Angkor. I'll leave you with that. Any questions, please?
For the bronzes that you use for processional?
Sadly, no references exist, but the very fact that they were movable bronzes mean that they could have been used for processions. But you don't see a lot of bronzes because you have to remember that they went through a phase of conflict where anything of metal was melted. So anything that was left by when you're looking at a prolonged conflict, nothing survived. So during Parmantiya's time, he focused purely on what was excavated on top. So he did a lot of effort on covering the stone and brick sculptures, but there's not much reference of metal sculptures except for about to my memory, about 3 or 4. And most of it, because they have been not only during the American War, even there was a lot of conflict between the Cham and the Khmer at a later stage, and the Khmer were victorious at some point of time. And later the Chinese came in. And during war, metal seems to be the first plunder that can be easily carried out. And sadly, we don't have much examples.
If we were to go to Vietnam, is there any kind of structured tour or anything, or we have to have?
Well, Mission is still on the tourist route, so you can easily cover. But some of the other sites, you will have a big problem if you're vegetarian, because there's no concept of vegetarianism in all these places. Number 2, language is a big issue. So I would say that you need local help to travel, because public transport is still not that much there for some of the other sites. Mission, you can definitely go. I think we have some friends who have just gone. It's pretty much accessible. Hanoi, the museums, of course, they are tourist friendly, but some of the actual sites, I'm not saying, even in India is the same problem. They don't even know. We go ask villagers, they point us new temples, they don't know that there exists an old temple. So I wouldn't blame it, but it's very difficult to find. So we have spent, I would have spent close to 3 days to just find out, because the problem is you spell out the name, it's different, because they pronounce somewhere different. So you have to ask them old, how much of old they remember. So it's quite difficult to go to some of these offbeat sites.
The reference for these sites is the Parmashiyar's book. Does he mention the sites?
See, the problem is most of it, because Vietnam's GPS is still not great, so we have not been able to track some of these sites on GPS tags. So only the cities are known. So once you reach the city, you have to ask around. It's still not open. It's a communist state. So.
And it is still mine-friendly.
Some of them are. Mission in some of the areas is still not been cleared. Some of the sites down south are a problem. You need to have proper permission to go. Up north towards Hanoi is much better, it's been cleared. But Mission especially is a problem. You cannot step out of the designated path. I think every year we see, because they dropped so much ammunition, so it's not just mines, it's unexploded bombs that they keep finding out. So it's that's why I think they coordinate off. It's not more landmines and booby traps. Yes, it is booby traps are also there, but it's more a case of airdrop bombs that have not gone off.
These bombs can explode after so many years.
What happened about 3 years ago, I asked this question and they showed me a paper cutting. So they laid a road, nothing happened, and then after some time somebody moved a heavy farm harvesting equipment, and then it blew up, because it was a landmine that was kept for tanks. So it requires a certain weight to go on for it to go off. So even the road roller, I think they use a Chinese road roller, it was not heavy, but when the farm harvesting equipment went over it, it blew up. So that's the problem with bombs. I think they don't go bad. Well, Vietnam, Cambodia too is the same problem. Cambodia, the issue is landmines, which is much more riskier. Okay. Thank you, Sharon.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Thank you so much.
The 10th century.
Yeah. Now, Gupta influence in the 3rd, 4th centuries, and afterwards there seems to be a linkage to the Pallava clan.
No, but you mentioned, whenever you mentioned inscriptions or even sculptures from the 10th century, you said that it might be Gupta influence, but don't you think it was time periods are too far off?
See, the thing is, we are talking about script, language, influence. So when you talk about script, we say it's Pallava Grantha, then you are prejudiced. What I'm trying to say is, there has been inscriptions which are in this script which we call Pallava Grantha, wherein the Pallavas were not even established in Kanjipuram. Where would they go all the way and sell their script to the Vietnamese?
Who's
temple.
Yes, they have a very good team of people. And
WMF was taking care of the temple, existing temple in the same way.
one or two sites are, they have, the museums are the best I've gone. They have probably the best maintained museums in the world. Unfortunately, I wouldn't say the same for the sites, but they don't seem to have the problem that we have in India. You don't have people smoking and drinking inside these sites that we have. So at least they respect it as a sacred site. No, even the locals don't smoke when they go side. So there is or bhaya Sami Umachi Kanakuting. So
But WMF further going there.
see, the problem is they have a love-hate relationship with America. For a long time, when you go to the Kuchi tunnels, you can actually fire live ammunition. And the dummies were US soldiers. And it took a lot of effort to make them take it. About 10 years ago only, they removed the uniform and they made it dummies where you can shoot. So it is an issue on that. So now they are slowly moving ahead. But it's not as rampant. The people are very proud. You should remember they're the only race that are victorious in this war. So they are a very proud race and they don't sell their heritage like we do.
But Angkor is the brand name of brandy and there is a...
See, Angkor is to me, the conservation is all tourist driven. It's all money making. And it's too commercial, and the way they have made up all those spaces that have been looted. Today you go to Angkor, whatever you see, 1% is original. Rest all is man-made, cemented. The bulk of the statues are either in Phnom Penh Museum or in museums overseas. So actually you go to Angkor to see the structure, that's it. Not one statue there is, even the leper king is a replica, is a fake. So they don't name it also. Thank you. Thank you, Sharon. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much.
Hope,
Thank you all for being here.
hope it was worth.
It was fabulous.
Thank you.
When is the Angkor trip slated?
We will let you know.
Sir, actually, I want to show the pictures of Angkor what we have taken from the museum. I thought this session is not for that, that's why I just
He came back because of us, our effort. So we are in touch with the museum director.
So I thought of that, please explain this too, because you are having one more session for them, then I will come for them.
The restitution is a separate session for that. It was a back lead, didn't come easy. So we are taking the board for that. Poker, we